Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
But NewSpring Church in Wichita, Kansas. The Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. Or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. Join my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
Good evening, Noah. How's it going tonight?
I'm doing well. I want to start by thanking NewSprings for having us out here. We are going to chat with them as the night rolls on. Before we do that, I want to bring in a special guest. It is Ilan from Scale. Ilan, welcome into the program.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Noah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Thanks for making the time. Can you start by telling me, if somebody hasn't heard about the Southern California Linux Expo, what is Scale?
So Scale's a conference about all things open source, open platforms, free culture in general. We cover we're in our 22nd year running the show. We started the show when we were all naive kids in college, thinking that it would be an easy thing to do to run a conference. 22 years later, most of us are still involved in the planning. The team's grown and shifted, but we're still covering all things related to open source, Linux and open platforms. And so we have sessions that are covering everything from how to get started with Linux if you've never used Linux before and you want to become you want to be able to start using it, whether it's at home on the desktop or at work in a server professional capacity. We have tracks about everything from DevOps to Kubernetes to security to free culture and how to make do all that graphic and photo editing at home that you might do with normally with proprietary tools, doing that with things like GIMP and Inkscape and Darktable and the like. So there's really something for everybody. If you care about Linux, open source, containers, security around all those things, you can join us at Scale March 6th to the 9th in Pasadena. And this year, I think we even have a special guest giving a presentation. I think I saw your name on the schedule, Noah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Basically, we're going to try to do a live podcast panel. So we figure we have a bunch of geeks and nerds in the room. What better thing to do than to get them around a table and ask them questions?
And that's a part of part of UbuCon, which is happening just as Scale gets started. One of the fun things that we've had happen with Scale in the last 20 some odd years was that as our community's grown, we've had other open source communities come to us and say, can we can we come crash your party and run our own events just before Scale gets started. And so one of those events this year is UbuCon, which is a conference about all things Ubuntu and part of the Ubuntu community where you're presenting, Noah. But we also have groups like DevOps Day LA. We have groups like the Quai Personal AI Project, which is working to make open source AI something that we can all run at home and are outside of hosted services. And so they'll be running a full day about how to get started with that, bringing in some heavy hitters like Bruce Schneier from the security world, Doc Searles, who was editor-in-chief for Linux Journal for many years. We've got the founder of Atari talking about how AI can be used for open source AI can be used for educational purposes. So a lot of big names there. AI is obviously an exciting topic, but there's a whole slew of things even outside just the core Linux and open source conference that are worth checking out.
Talk to me about kids. You said Scale is for everybody, and in the past, it seems like there's been a focus on a younger generation. Will that be happening this year? And if so, what are some of the events or speakers that will be tailored towards kids?
So Scale started when we were all kids, maybe not as young as some of the kids we see at Scale. These days, a lot of the people that were, college and high school kids when we first started Scale in 2002 now have kids of their own. And so there's sort of two things that we wanted to do. One is, if you're a parent, we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for you to come to Scale and, without feeling like you had to abandon your kids for the weekend. So there's an opportunity for this to be, it's a family friendly event. So you can, bring kids out to get hands on with, Linux, open source, STEM topics, like that. As well as an opportunity for kids to present. So one of the things that we've been doing for a little over a decade now is running a track entirely populated with student speakers. And that's kids between usually like grades 6 to 12, talking about their work with open source and Linux and trying to get their friends and colleagues excited about, and classmates that is excited about getting involved in tech early on. And so, again, I think our goal with that is twofold. One is to make sure that all the parents that want to come out to Scale for the weekend have, don't feel like they have to abandon their kids at home, but also a chance to sort of help, and more importantly, I think a chance to sort of help populate the next generation of open source contributors and software developers. We all got our start through open source, through Linux user groups and meetups, and so we want to make sure that the kids have the same opportunity.
One of the things we sometimes... Absolutely. One of the things I think that gets lost sometimes is we get stuck inside of the tech and we kind of forget that there's other aspects. One of the presentations that caught my attention was Make Your Open Source Story Work For You by Krista Burdine. And effectively, she's going to go into some of the other things, the psychological, social, education, and freedom aspects that focus around open source. How did that presentation come about?
I'm not super familiar with that particular presentation. We have so much on the schedule this year. But what I'll say is we have, we try to cover both hard topics and soft topics around open source at Scale. Krista, if I recall correctly, is part of the Rocky Linux project where she's a community manager, and so her story is very relevant to other open source practitioners. I think the question is sort of what's, why, I think, the question is sort of why do you engage with open source yourself, right? For some people, it's a question of scratching their itch and fixing a bug. For some people, it's around, trying to build their resume and get that job opportunity that they might not have because they're coming from a non-traditional background or from, they're self-taught. And for some people, they want to get involved in open source without writing code, without doing the technical bits. They want to engage on QA or documentation or helping to market projects or whatever it might be. And all of these things are, all of those ways of participating are relevant and important and make for a thriving open source community. And so, Krista, who's being a community manager and working with so many open source community members, I imagine she has a great deal of experience there. I think that one falls within our career day track, which is one of the many tracks we have at Scale is one focused specifically on how to how to boost your career with open source and how to get started in open source as a job. And with so many layoffs over the last couple of years, whether it's through the pandemic or more recently through the AI efficiency boom or whatever it might be, we wanted to make sure that folks had an opportunity to use Scale to find their next role.
Speaking of using Scale to find your next role, one of the other presentations that's going to be happening is Adriana Frick from Canonical. She's working on it's a curriculum system, really, and the idea is to make an affordable entry-level way that people can prove the skills they have at home inside of the workplace. She's going to be presenting at Scale for using certification to prove your home lab skills. That can be a valuable way to get somebody who has geek skills employed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so many of us do.
Can you give me the? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I think there's some lag. I apologize.
No, Yep. No, there. So go right ahead.
I was just saying, there's so much that we all do. I don't know how. I'm not. I don't know your origin story in open source and tech. No, but for so many of us, we got started by hacking at home, right? For me, it was, for me, it was wanting to be able to share internet connection online, a broadband internet connection with my family, with us. I wouldn't have to take turns at the computer. So I spent a whole bunch of time learning how to be an intro, the very basics of Linux systems administration, basically to have a NAT box. And so I just think there's so many of things that, we each do in our own home labs or in our home life that end up becoming, the foundation for skills that might enable us to do, professional work with Linux and open source. And so, I think helping people to enable, their home lab as a learning experience and a resume builder is huge.
If somebody has never been to Scale before, what advice would you have for them coming for the first time?
So one is, I would say don't be shy. I know that's hard to say. You're coming to a place where you maybe don't know folks, but if you're listening to this show, you definitely you at least know Noah's voice. So pop in and come say hi to Noah and his talk. But really, I think the Scale community is very welcoming, and everybody's there to learn and make friends. So join in and come make friends, with others. Ask questions of speakers, ask questions of other attendees. Participate in the social activities that we have in the evenings. There's just lots of opportunities to network and make friends across Scale. And I think where a lot of people end up learning the most at Scale is not in this wealth of, 100 plus talks about Linux and open source that where there's a lot to learn, but rather in this hallway track where they get a chance to meet, future coworkers, future collaborators on open source projects, and just future friends. And so, I highly recommend people spend time just getting to know the folks around them at Scale. That's one of the most valuable things that we offer.
Can you talk a little bit about what some of the evening activities look like? I know that typically there's a game night. Typically that game night has family-friendly activities. Is that happening again this year? And if so, what are some of the other things that are accompanying it?
Yeah, conferences often have, big parties that happen on, one of the nights of the events, either to welcome folks or to wrap things up. We like parties as much as the next conference, but, as I mentioned earlier, we're a family-friendly event. So we want to make sure that, parents who bring their kids to the show to take advantage of some of the educational opportunities, don't have to abandon their kids for the evening activities. So rather than a big party with, where at a bar somewhere, what we end up doing is we take a large exhibit hall at the venue and turn it into a big game room. So we have everything from board games to, we've had laser tag one year, we've had escape rooms. I don't want to spoil the surprises for what we have this year. But I seem to recall, Noah, you getting deep into the games at the show.
Yes.
And so they're fun for all ages, whether you're, I've seen 5-year-olds running around. I've seen 90-year-olds running around. So regardless of where you are on that spectrum, as long as you're there to learn about open source and have fun, there's lots of hands-on activities there. And we don't shy away from the food and the beverage and other fun things too. But the focus really is on bringing all the generations together and having a ton of fun together in that game night as a social activity. We also have a bunch of sort of more lighthearted talks in the evening. So we have an event called Upscale where people give Ignite style talks. These are, sort of 5-minute talks where slides are auto advancing. They get into, they touch on topics that are a little bit more, maybe a little bit more fun than some of the technical topics throughout the day. And it's also entertaining to watch speakers sort of stumble over themselves as they try to figure out how to keep up with their own slides, whether it's going too fast or too slow or whatever it might be. So lots of entertainment there. And then, Pasadena is just a fun town. One of the things about what we love about the venue where we're at is that, it's just so close to a lot of, bars and restaurants and other nightlife in the Pasadena area. And it's one of the things that made us pick this as our new home versus, some of the other venues we've been at the past. This year, what's I think even more special is that if you're not following, I imagine it's been hard to miss the news, but the LA area got hit by a lot of really terrible wildfires this year. And the wider Pasadena area where we run our conference also was hit in that same way. And so I think it's, we thought long and hard about, do we continue with the event? What do we do? And the team felt it was important that we kind of bring that energy and excitement and fun back into the city, kind of get back to local businesses, and really, just help the city continue with its recovery. So we encourage attendees that come out for scale to come find a local business in the area, whether it's your favorite restaurant or or some other evening activity. Let's bring that energy and excitement back to Pasadena.
Since you bring it up, I'll ask, is there anything that we should be aware of as people that are not from California as we come into Pasadena, and undoubtedly some pretty serious trauma, some pretty serious hurt? Is there anything that people should be aware of to be courteous and respectful and kind going into a city knowing that something tragic has happened and you guys are on the back end of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, LA is a very large, and spread out city. So, not many people were impacted, but not clearly not everybody. Pasadena, the wider Pasadena area that we're in definitely was impacted. And so even the venue where where we're holding scale up until, recently was was housing for people that had lost their homes. So they've now, my understanding is the Red Cross has helped them find new places to be. And, we're in a good spot now, but it is a, natural disasters are challenging for everybody, especially those that are impacted. So I think just sort of be cognizant of the folks around you and sort of who may or may not have been impacted. I think helping, businesses are also heavily impacted by events like these. The downtown Pasadena area is like a vibrant sort of corridor where we have the event is sort of this vibrant corridor of businesses with restaurants and nightlife. A lot of the folks that probably would be frequenting those spots in the past have are busy rebuilding their lives. So helping to sort of patronize those businesses and sort of bring energy back into the neighborhood in a respectful way is I think is important as well. And we've had people in our community that were impacted in various ways, whether losing their homes or their employers were impacted or both. So we're cognizant of sort of the challenges folks have suffered, and we're we want to make sure that everybody's happy, healthy, and having a good time. So we're as a team, we're thinking about that as well.
Very good. Ilan, give us the dates one more time, the location. It is the Southern California Expo. It's coming up in just a couple of weeks. I'll be there. We'll be doing a live show from the show floor.
Yep. So again, it's Scale coming up March 6th through the 9th at the Pasadena Convention Center. That is a Thursday through Sunday. So if you can't take off work, no worries. Come by on Saturday and Sunday. If your weekends are busy with baseball practice or something, no worries. Come on Thursday or Friday, or stay for all 4 days. Don't forget, you can use the promo code NOAH for 15% off registrations, just special for those Ask Noah listeners. And yeah, if you come on, if you heard me here and you're at the show and you see somebody with Ilan written on their back, come on my jersey, come by, say hi. Always love to meet people that I heard of and learn about how they heard about us, about Scale and what brought them to town. So, looking forward to welcoming you back to Pasadena, Noah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I can't wait. Ilan, I appreciate the time as always. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, talk soon. Thanks, Noah.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of February 16th, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. KDE Plasma 6.3 is now available, and the KDE team has also announced the release of KDE Frameworks 6.11. The GNOME team has announced the availability of GNOME 47.4. TRX, the Tomb Raider 1 and 2 Community Edition open source reimplementation project, has continued advancing and has released a fresh version of Tomb Raider with additional Linux support. In distro news, Netrunner 25 has been released. The latest Endeavour OS release, Mercury, has been announced. And OpenSUSE has announced that they are switching from AppArmor to SE Linux as the default mandatory access control system for new open source Tumbleweed installations. In open source security news, 2 new OpenSSH vulnerabilities have been announced. And North Korean hackers are tainting open source code to steal crypto and developers' data. And lastly, in open source AI news, China's Baidu has made their latest Ernie AI model open source as competition heats up.
So you may have been caught at the beginning of the program. We're live in Wichita, Kansas this evening. We're at a beautiful facility called NewSpring Church. And joining me and Steve to discuss what's going on here at NewSpring Church, it is the IT guy / electrician / we fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed guy. Welcome in, Pat. Ooh. Good to talk to you. I think we have Pat. Yeah. There we go. All right. Now let's try. Now give me a shot. You're push to talk. There we go. I think I hear him in there in the background. Steve, can you hear Pat?
I heard 1 or 2 words.
Hi, Steve. How you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
There we go.
I'm doing really good. Glad to have AltaSpeed down in Kansas. We've been using them for many years, but this is the first time we got to do a site visit and actually have them see what we're doing down here.
So here's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. And Steve, I might even let you kind of kick this discussion off a little bit to the extent that you hear this and go, oh, I resonate with that. Have you have gone into, you frequently go into companies in which you don't maybe have any idea how their IT infrastructure was set up, how they got to be here, but they bring you in at some point along the process and say, here's a problem we have, now how do we get to this solution? Can you open us up by talking a little bit about how you begin to learn an environment that you've never been in before, that you've never explored before? You have an IT person or you have a local resource that's able to kind of help you walk through it, but I'm sure there's got to be a process in which you evaluate, here's how I'm going to learn these things, or here's how I'm going to figure out what I need to know to even begin to address the problem.
Yeah, so it first starts with a statement of what the problem is, if there's a problem. So I guess it depends on why they brought me in. Am I solving a problem for them, or am I achieving a task, right? And both of those guide what we call a discovery session. And the discovery session is just exactly that. It's meant to be a series of questions that helps to open up the dialogue, to get a better understanding, to kind of map things out. What we find is that oftentimes clients don't even have a really good understanding of their own environment. This person here has some bits of knowledge, and the person that retired last year had a couple of bits of knowledge, and somebody over in that department has a little bit more. And that gets exposed more and more when someone who is new comes in and asks some questions, because I'm sure that you've never done this, Noah, but I frequently accidentally make assumptions on people's knowledge just based on very arbitrary things, right? Like I just assume, for example, that you know how the key commands in Vi work because Vi has been around so long, for example. And so because of that, sometimes there's assumed knowledge in documentation or things that don't get plainly stated because there's an assumption of knowledge, even though you don't realize you're doing it. And so coming in and being like, hey, I'm the new person, I need you to walk me through every little nook and cranny, and you ask the silly questions. It sounds silly, but like, hey, there's an Ethernet cable. Where does that go? Right? How do I trace that back? What does it do? They sound like silly questions, but the silly questions oftentimes lead you to important discoveries that you need to know about.
So, Pat, can you talk, if you're willing to share anyway, how you initially got brought in? Because you kind of landed on D-Day, for lack of a better way to phrase that.
Absolutely, yeah. We were actually, unbeknownst to me, because at that time I was working more as an electrician and shop help, but we were working on a migration, a new server, and this new server, as they were moving everything to it, their old servers filled up with data and everything fell over. Well, the old server was their domain controller, print server, file server, and everything just stopped. it did the DNS and DHCP. And so after that one server quit, nobody could get on the internet. Nobody could do anything. And so, after a little bit of time, I was asked if I could step in and help. And the guy who was doing the work was a little over his head and just basically stepped aside. And I got to assume the role with no formal training and 6 passwords on a sheet of paper.
So can you talk a little bit about what your connection to the community, or how your connection to the community then benefited you? So you found yourself in an IT, your background wasn't necessarily IT. You started with, your actual background as an electrician, but you found yourself in an IT position and you had the tools and resources you needed, or you at least knew where to start looking for them, in part because you had been plugged into the community. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that did for you?
Yeah, so when I took over, I had been a owner in a company that built automated leveling systems, and I was a developer, but I wasn't an IT administrator, so I knew my way around computers pretty good, and I've been messing with Linux since 2012. So I was familiar with how some of the stuff worked that was there, but as far as real administration, I'd never logged into a domain controller. I didn't know how the DNS and DHCP all got set up, but I had some friends of mine that one of them was a IT architect at a large aircraft company here in Wichita, and he come over and he says, "Oh man, you really got a mess." And he says, "I've got 5 people that attend your church that I work with that work in our data centers. I'm gonna have a meeting with them, and we're just gonna pull them in around you, and we'll try to get you up to speed." And so between that, and I had listened to Noah on the radio since 2013 when he was back at Jupiter Broadcasting all the way through the Ask Noah show. I quickly knew that I needed to get some help, so I asked my executive pastor. I said, "I really think I need to hire Altispeed and just have somebody who I could ask day-to-day questions to." And it was so great to have so many people just stepping around me. And I had a guy who started the domain controllers for the first time at that large aircraft company also show me the ropes and how not to get in too much trouble.
One of the things that you've done here that kind of blew me away, and it's a little bit removed from the IT world, but I think it'll fit squarely in Steve's camp, and he will be excited to hear about this. Talk to me about all of the custom LED work you've been doing here, because it's something else.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really big at NewSpring is building engaging environments, and part of the engaging environments is we do a lot of built-in art, and part of the art, they let me kind of go crazy with LEDs. They draw up stuff and they say, "How could we make this more engaging?" And I would just say, "Well, I think I'd do this, this, and this," and they just say, "Okay, well, show me what that would look like." "Yeah, let's do more of that." "And can you do this over here?" And next thing you know, we're building out these whole environments. And I kind of follow something I heard Noah say a long time ago. He said, you figure out how to make a box and putting something in it, and then just make more boxes and put more things in it. So we play a lot of the same things. We standardized on some simple, repeatable processes that always get the same result, but by tweaking a few variables, they look like they were new and crafted just for that area.
So in specific, you have landed on a particular DMX. So let's start here. We'll work our way backwards the other way. So you take an addressable piece of LED strip tape. Most people are familiar with that. Amazon, various different places, and you set that up, and you connect those wires to a specific DMX box that you have kind of standardized on. You really like. You connect that to a DMX King, and you've got those connected to Raspberry Pis running QLC Plus. Can you talk about each component, why you've set it up that way, and what the end result to somebody who just wants to fire a light sequence, how that works?
Yeah, so early on, I realized that there was going to be a repeating pattern, that we needed to be able to control these lights from a remote source. We needed to control a lot of lights from a lot of remote sources, and some of them were using the environment's control system. So it might be Jantz Vista, or I might be off on a little island of like behind our check-in, where I just needed to create a splash of color behind the check-in as a piece of art on the wall, just something that didn't cost much, but it looked really cool. And so we use a Meanwell power supply and a DMX decoder that splits out 8 channels of RGB LED. And like you said, a Raspberry Pi and QLC Plus, that same thing gets played all the time when we need to create a new environment. We look for these simple things. When we're doing the individual addressable LEDs, unless I'm doing something custom where I take an Arduino and I write some custom C code on it to drive them, most of the time I'm buying an off-the-shelf right from Amazon controller that has like 19 functions, and I figure out a way to make it fit right with what we're doing.
Do you happen to remember the name of that 8-channel controller that you that you've been using, or that we see all over the place?
They come from so many. They're the white label, Oriental controller, but I don't know the brand on that one.
Okay, I think I found. If this isn't exactly what you have, it's very similar, DMX 512 decoder, but we'll find the exact one and we'll put it in a link for you in the show notes. What I think you've done that is really unique and cool is typically you would use QLC Plus to do something like a light show where you're doing a set of sequences and you're going from one scene to the next. So it might be the slow part of a song has slow chases, and a fast upbeat part of the song has fast flashy paces, and then the whole song comes to a stop while all the instruments drop out and there's maybe a cool vocal thing and all the lights are really high for a second, that sort of thing, right? You've done it slightly different. You've created your sequences, but then you've exposed them via a web UI that's built into QLC Plus, so that I'm not trying to be insulting here, but you've made it idiot-proof, where anybody can just walk up and hit a button and it fires those chases. How did you do that?
They actually have a screen builder in the QLC Plus. They have a special download version for the Raspberry Pi. They require a donation. I can't remember what they ask for the donation, but it's fairly inexpensive. But then you can put you can build your own interface, and so I just put sliders on it for every color, for every channel of the LED strips. That way anybody can walk up, pull that up, and in fact, my biggest thing I was trying to do is make sure I didn't have to set all the environments up every week, and they're not saying, "Hey, it's Valentine's Day, can you turn this pink and purple?" And so I got it simple enough that anybody could walk up just by designing an interface that anybody could just log in with their phone to the right IP address and make the changes.
Steve, as you're hearing any of this, does any of this appeal to you from a home automation standpoint, or is it one of those things you say, like, if I wanted colored lights and I was working inside of an event venue, maybe that would be interesting to me, but I have very little interest to make colored lights inside of my house? Oops. What's here? What happened to Steve? There we go.
Hear me
Steve,
now?
right there? There we go.
I'm
yes.
here.
Hi.
So I mentioned before that we do use a couple of different colored lights as a way of a local alert, so that if the internet goes down and we have something critical, like the fridge gets left open, some of the lights turn like a violet color, which is not normal around here. It kind of gets your attention. But on the scale of what is being done at NewSpring, I think it adds a lot of complexity for not a lot of gain because of the number of places the small number of places we have lights that change color.
Yeah. We kind of drove past this a little bit, and I just want to dig in a little further. You mentioned the Meanwell Power Supply, and this is a company that if you're in the electrical world, or if you're in the component world, or if you're dealing with any sort of high-end electronics, you've probably come across them. Why do you like them so much?
Well, I think I like them so much because when I look through all the ones that failed, 90% of them don't say Meanwell.
Okay, that's a good reason. Can you talk a little bit about what you hoped to get from our time here? And I guess, one, do you feel like you got that? But two, what would you tell the next church or the next person or the next consultant or the next group that's looking to say, I want to learn, I want to either expand my environment or I want to fix things and I want to bring somebody in? How do they get the most out of that time with whoever it is they're bringing in, whether you're on the consulting side or you're on the customer side bringing the consultant in?
Yeah, well, my biggest hope was that Altispeed would actually get to see what impact they've made here, because when I started here, there was one Linux box and nobody's ever logged into it. And now we're running everything that we can on the server side. We've got lots of backup servers and main file servers, virtual hosts, and it's all running Ubuntu or Rocky Linux, and it's all running Cockpit and is easy to interface with. And I'm teaching new young guys how to get in and run these things. And Altispeed has helped build all this, and they've inspired a lot of it. And I really wanted to make sure that they got to come and see. So if anything happened to me, they'd understand when we're talking about the 10 gig switch that goes to the east building, what that looked like, and to also teach me the things I don't even know about my own system. We were using some of the tools like Libre NMS, and they were showing me things I could do on it that I didn't even know that functionality existed. So really it was a knowledge swap. We set up some software, and we got to let the junior sysadmin set it all up and have Noah and Peter in the background just going through telling us what, don't forget this. Oh, look, here's where you find the admin password and where you change things. It was just a fantastic time. And I think, there's no substitution for getting your feet on the ground and actually walking through the equipment and talking through it.
100%. I want to dig a little further into the team that you've put together. So you started as one job, and when we got here, it's like a fine-oiled machine, and you've got younger people that aren't just doing the work, Patrick, but they're excited, they're passionate, they want to learn, they're engaged, they want to do this as a career, and you kind of jump-started it for them. You kind of cherry-picked them off of various places, and they weren't doing IT, and you brought them into the fold. Can you talk about how you did that? There's a certain level of sacrificial investment that comes with it, right? Because at the forefront, they're just costing you time. It's going to take you 3 times longer to get anything done because you can't just go do it. You got to show them how to do it. And they're going to get it wrong the first 4 times. They're going to have to do it anyway. And get the show. Why did you go about doing that? Why take on that hassle, and how has it worked out?
What's cool is most of the young men that I've got the opportunity to hire to work alongside me, I've actually watched them since they were in middle school growing up, and they were the techies, and they were the ones who were always asking me questions of how it worked. And so when I had the opportunity to hire somebody who was going to help me, I needed some young legs to run around because I'm getting closer to 50 all the time. And so sometimes it's nice to have some, 18-year-old kids running around that can help you out. So when they got older, when they were close to graduating, I'd ask them what they're doing. And, one of them was working at a grocery store, but he was the one who asked me every week about his Python class that he was taking in the 8th grade. And he'd tell me about what he was learning. And I'm like, what are you doing? What's your plan for your life? And he's like, well, I don't know. He said, I'd like to write novels or do this, that, and the other. And I said, well, you don't have to stop writing novels and be interested in being a creative, but you're so interested into the computers. Why don't you come help me out some? And then, you have them start stacking servers and building, Linux boxes that they're using in the environments, and it starts to catch a fire. So people love to be useful. And so far I've got to, launched 2 careers for 2 different people that worked for me, and one of them was here yesterday. He had the day off work, and he come in on his day off to spend the day with us just to meet Noah, because he knew that I talked so highly about Noah and Peter. He wanted to come in and spend the day with us, so he volunteered his time to sit and ask questions and help us do whatever needed done. So I just, my goal in this is to launch as many careers as I can for young men, just get them their first job so that they can get their second job. And it's been cool because I got to see them double their income and be able to move out on their own and get married. That's awesome.
It's super cool. And I think the thing that stood out to me as I met these young people and as I was walking through, they were, it's one thing to say, oh, I have experience or I was able to get my hands on and I knew what I was doing with Linux. It's another thing. They've become passionate about wiping machines and putting Linux on it. And then what the attitude that comes out of that is they feel like they have a new skill set. They feel like they have a new way to manage a thing, and nobody can pull the rug out from under them. And so you can take any repurposed piece of hardware, and we watched them do this numerous times throughout the weekend, right? Take a laptop, pull a thing, and load it on. And one of those gentlemen you're talking about is actually going into cybersecurity. So you pivoted their life and the direction by giving an opportunity, and then being willing to sacrificially invest in those people to say, I was given an opportunity. I mean, given an opportunity by way of, hey, there's a disaster. Do you want to fix it? Good luck, But you took that and you turned it into a blessing, and now you're turning it into a way to invest in the next generation. And so, yeah, a lot of work got done here, but a whole lot of it got done by younger people that are out running around doing the thing while you're kind of directing the show, so to speak. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's been very cool.
Steve, anything you want to ask or get in with Pat before we let him go?
No, I think he's probably had a long day already. It was interesting to hear about the LEDs. I think it would be more impactful to actually have like a little demo as opposed to trying to get it described over, text, so to speak.
Yeah, it really doesn't do it justice. The best way I can verbally describe it to you is if you think of the neatest organized piece of wood panel. By the way, they have a CNC machine. I've heard that once or twice. They have a wood panel that they mount all of these DMX decoders to. The wire almost looks art-like. It's so neat and careful, and then goes out to the various different places. And so it does all. It can just be a particular color, but Pat has automated various different things too. One of the things that comes to mind, there's a roller coaster, and the roller coaster is lined with LED tape, and then you coated the pixels of the LED to act as the car, and so the LEDs go almost like a car would around the roller coaster, things like that. And so it brings this really awesome visual appeal that you would think is thousands of dollars in some very complicated control system, but really it's, in the end, it's a piece of plywood and some various different parts all carefully put together by somebody who's really passionate and cares about it. And so it's been really cool to watch. And like I say, investing in the next generation has been very neat. So thanks for joining us, Patrick. We really appreciate having you. Of course, we'll get you back on the program soon.
Thanks, Noah.
Yeah, you bet. Steve, you want to do some feedback?
Let's run through it.
Our first email comes in today from Scuba Steve. Scuba Steve says, hey guys, I really enjoyed your review of Image on this week's show. As somebody who's been playing with Image for the past year, but only figured out where it fits, I thought I'd share my setup with you. Like most people, I take photos on my iPhone, which I'm already backing up to my NAS via the excellent PhotoSync app. However, I shoot photos with a dedicated camera that I have neatly organized into album on the same NAS. For this setup, external library feature was a game changer. With the Image container running on my LAN, I simply mounted the Samba shares containing the photos as read-only Docker volumes, and then I added the external libraries within Image. It works great. I used the VM Docker host as a 2 virtual CPU and 4 gigs of RAM, and it was able to churn through my entire library overnight. That's about 18,000 photos and 1,000 videos. I'm blown away by the performance of the web app and the ease at which you can jump around and scroll through a massive library. Like Steve, Thinking of image as a front end of the photos that already exist made it a lot more sense for my workflow and allowed me to leave my photos where they were and not have multiple copies floating around in my NAS. Mounting the volume as read-only gave me the peace of mind that I needed to verify the drive to start using it. And once they land, the ability to share all of the metadata between users, I'll set my wife up. Thanks for all you guys do. Keep up the good work. Scuba Steve. So Steve, thoughts on the read-only thing as a way to, one of the things that you had mentioned was you're like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't really know what the photos are. Does the external library with read-only, would that solve that problem where you would feel like, yep, I feel very solid that if there's a problem, image isn't going to be able to hose anything?
Well, so I basically did that without doing read-only. As you know, I basically wrote a script to go and grab all of the photos from all of the different places. So one of the really positive things for me personally about image was it made me go find all of the places that I had photos so that I could put them into image. And as part of that, I now glob them all together in a directory under their year. And essentially, image gets access to files that it can delete. But if it goes crazy, I have already enumerated all of my files and globbed them together somewhere that image can't touch. And so I wanted to be able to do things like delete files from image or use the deduplication or that sort of stuff. So it's a similar idea where I don't trust it, which is why I made so they say you should have at least 3 copies. This would make 4 copies and 1 complete new copy of the archive because of all of the backup scripts. They were getting backed up. They just were dispersed over the place. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Image is cool stuff. It really is. I fall more in love with it every day. RV writes in and says, I just wanted to say Endless is amazing. I installed it for my 8-year-old son, and it's been lots of educational games that he loves. There are games around problem-solving, math, programming. Also, the parental controls in Endless OS is unlike anything I've ever used. I'm really hoping it would be enrolled to GNOME so more distros could benefit from it. Just FYI, the RDP stuff is a GNOME feature and available on most distros running recent versions of GNOME. So, Steve, to catch you up, I was talking. Oh, actually, you had an inside peek, so you knew this was coming before I even talked about it on the show last week. But I had mentioned that RDP built into Endless OS, that just single little tick box to turn it on, then you can remotely control it, has been a game changer for me as I've been dropping Endless OS machines, and it's become my go-to pop box because first of all, the installer is easy. There's literally 2 buttons. It's what hard drive you want to install it on, and are you ready to go? And that's it. It doesn't ask you time zone, doesn't ask you your name, doesn't ask you any of that. Just where do you want to go and how much, and then you go and it's done. Then you open up the sharing tab and just toggle remote, and all of a sudden, Bob's your uncle. You can remote that machine as RDP. So that means it works from Macs, it works from Windows boxes. You can get to it from anywhere. And so I was lamenting about how exciting and helpful that's been to me to be able to bounce to these boxes everywhere without having to install anything, configure anything, just tick a box and it works. I'm learning that's actually a function of GNOME. So hands off to the developers of GNOME for integrating native RDP into as a remote protocol. That's fantastic. Our second email comes in from Augustine. And he says, hi, Noah and Steve. First, thanks for the show and all the information you give back to the community. Here's my question. I just got engaged and my fiance wants a wedding website to handle invitations, RSVPs, and the important information. It'll be easier than sending out paper invitations to multiple countries. I've seen a lot of free commercial sites that allow this. However, I don't know I want to give a lot of personal information about myself and my guests to a third party. Do you know of any self-hosted alternatives for a privacy-respecting service? So, Steve, if you were going down this route, do you have thoughts? And B, if you don't have thoughts, what do you think of Hugo?
So I guess my first comment is I'm so far past this at this stage that barring some sort of catastrophe, I don't really need to think too much about this. But I had a significant number of older people at my wedding, and the website thing would not have flown. Between just being upset that they weren't given the honor of receiving an actual invitation, getting everybody coordinated to actually use a thing. Did I click the button? Oh, I thought I submitted that, and all of those kind of things would 100% have been a big problem for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know of any. I mean, there are there's like Get Together, right? So there's I think it's gettogether.io. So there are some open source projects that are based around event or event management. So you might check those out. But personally, if it were me and I were getting married and I were looking for something, I'd probably just go with the Hugo site. Our third email comes in from Ron. Ron writes in and says, "Greetings all. Would you have recommendations for a home server hardware with the goals of photo backups, a video server, backup our files, host Minecraft server, some additional overhead to try out automation web servers and dashboards, and lastly, I'd like to not break the bank and just know there's a trade-off between dollars and capability. If money were no object, I'd probably just buy the biggest Dell, HP, or Lenovo server I could find, throw money at it until it works." I like that attitude. So, Steve, if you were looking for a cost-effective way to kind of get a general-purpose, do-it-all home server, what would you be looking at?
I would. Well, so he didn't give us any kind of ballpark for what the budget is, and that makes this kind of hard, right? Because we only have generic statement of some of the stuff that he wants to do here. Honestly, eBay is a good way to go, provided that you are diligent in reading very carefully the ads, like the descriptions there. You can pick up a really good AMD Epic server for $500, $600, and then you add the RAM, the case, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. But again, not knowing what your budget is, that's the way that I went for my last two. Is I went with AMD Epic servers, and I have no complaints.
Yeah, the biggest problem you had was there were too many cores for your software. Here, I tell you what. Here's what I would do, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is because this is what I did. I bought one of the HP ProLiant microservers. You can pick them up on eBay for maybe $200-300, and here's what I like about them. 4 physical 3.5-inch drive bays, which means you can put spinning rust and get yourself a nice 3-drive VDEV put together. The other thing I like about it is on the top, it has an additional 2.5-inch drive slot, which is helpful because it means you can put your operating system in one place, and then you can have a big old spinning rust pool to store all your data. Here's what it would get you and how I think it fits your particular circumstance very well. The first thing it would get you is a whole bunch of storage. So you're going to be able to do all your backups. You're going to be able to do all of your video and file storage. None of that's going to be a problem for you. Here's where I think the rubber's really going to meet the road, though. Where I think the rubber's really going to meet the road for you is when you want to start getting into virtualization. Because if you were to install Ubuntu as the base operating system on that little HP MicroLiant server, and then on top of the Ubuntu base, you installed the libvirt package, you'd be able to virtualize the Ubuntu server. And if and Ubuntu is going to have a built-in it's going to have a built-in kernel module for ZFS, which means you'll be able to use ZFS on the underpin on the bottom. So put 3 physical hard drives in there. Maybe they're 4 terabytes each, something like that, or 8 terabytes, 10 terabytes, whatever you can afford to do. Buy the server used for a few $100. Put a chunky SSD in there, a 120, a 256, something like that. And then install Ubuntu as the base operating system, configure ZFS, create a ZFS pool, use the 3 spinning drives you have for that ZFS pool, and then virtualize on top of that. And here's what you've done. You've built yourself a storage server and a virtual host all on one piece of hardware, and since you're trying to keep the budget in somewhat of a reasonable fashion, I don't know how much better you're going to do than a few $100, maybe $300-400, $500 at the most, I think is what you're going to pay for one of those MicroLiants. And it's going to be a small, portable server that isn't going to have extraordinarily loud fans, so you're not going to, the spousal approval factor will be there for you, and you'll be able to get all of the things that you listed on your list done. Give that a shot. Let me know if it works out. The music in our ears, it means we're out of time. I thank you for joining us. This show airs every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central at AskNoahShow.com. You can go to podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find all of the articles and references we use to make the show. We're back next Tuesday. If you'd like to follow us live, I'm at Colonel Linux. He's at Linux Evans. The show at Ask Noah Show. We're back next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com. Have a good week.